Crowhill here. Today we review an IPA and discuss some fairy tales. All right. Good evening,
gentlemen.
All right.
How are you, Crowhill and Longinus? Yes. How about some beer and conversation?
I think that's a great idea. What are we drinking?
This is an IPA from a local brewery.
Okay, that's good. Fantastic.
Right. So
I like
what's
IPAs.
On your mind?
Well, a little while ago we did a show on Snow White.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking there's a whole lot of other kinds of fairy tales and things out there. Maybe we should just take a look at some of those.
Yeah, and we listened to Snow White as read by the guys on the podcast called Grimm Reading.
That's right.
And we'll
but
talk
they had
about
a
some
whole
more
lot of other things.
There's so much going on.
And I actually like fairy tales. I think they're kind of fun.
Yeah, they are fun.
Yeah. All right. So first, what about this beer?
And it's local, and I love it gives you this. It gives you the stats and the facts.
Yeah. So it's from the Ministry of Brewing, which is it's funny. I dropped by there one time, and it's in an old church.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's why it's the Ministry
sort
of Brewing.
Downtown, pretty downtownish.
Yeah. Where is it?
Butcher's Hill.
Oh, Butcher's Hill. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a little bit
east.
North of Fells Point and a little bit east.
Yeah, okay.
I was thinking of the Guilford Hall.
Oh.
Yeah. Ministry of Brewing.
Yeah.
And the old Dominican church.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Okay.
So it's called 754, 7:54.
Yeah,
6
like
minutes
the
to
time.
8. Yeah, but what does that mean? What is? I don't understand.
And no indication.
No indication of what that means. It's a West Coast IPA. Well, that's what they claim, but it looks a little more amber.
It is a little more amber, and that's explained by the malts that they've got some Vienna and flaked rye.
Okay,
which is going to give it a little bit.
It's going to a little more of that malty flavor.
California
let me see it. Let me get in here.
And it's got familiar hops, Amarillo, Simcoe, and Citra.
If you gave that to me and said, "What kind of an IPA is this?" I would have said it's an East Coast IPA, not a West Coast IPA. It's darker.
Yeah.
The color is wrong for West Coast. It's got more of the malt backbone.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
It is. Oh, it's great.
But they just didn't call it the right thing, in my opinion.
No, my opinion too.
But anyway, it's a cool place. If you're in Baltimore, we ought to do a field trip.
And it was brewed on the East Coast, by the way.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah.
So we ought to go down there sometime and take some pictures. It's a pretty cool place. All right, so what's the background? Why did we pick the ones we're going to do today?
I said, when we did the show on Snow White, I said, I need to listen to the original. And just the first one I came across was Grimm Reading.
Okay.
Adam Field and Matt Hughes, two amateur grimmologists, who have decided we're going to
read... Is that a real word, grimmologist? No. Okay.
They are going to read all of them and discuss them in some pretty solid detail.
And they have an interesting banter back.
It's really a pleasant thing to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after I did that, I liked it so much I was just randomly listening to stories, only to find out I was listening to the end of them reading Volume 1.
Okay.
And as they get to the end of Volume 1, they categorized, or they set up a tournament style, putting stories against one another. Well, as they go, they rate them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I guess they took the highest rated, say 16, and put them in groups of 4, and then let the audience
vote,
and then
March Madness for
March Madness.
Tales.
And now so the one I was listening to was, and now we're down to our final 4.
Okay.
So I said, well, let's discuss our final 4, but it's going to be too much to discuss all 4.
It's going to be too much to do all 4.
So now, just keep in mind that the competition includes Little Red Riding Hood, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, Goldilocks, Hansel and Gretel.
A lot of the names you've heard before.
All of the big hits.
Yeah.
So you can may or may not anticipate
what's going to be in the
final 4.
Okay.
So coming in at number 4, drum roll please. The Fisherman and His Wife.
Yes.
Okie dokie.
All right. So, this was a weird one.
It's
So
weird.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Crowhill, why don't you just go ahead and summarize the plot, and then, because I want to talk about the themes more than
Yeah. Okay. So the story is very, very simple.
Yeah.
Really, it's a poor fisherman lives in this terrible hovel with his wife.
pigsty.
In a pigsty.
They actually live in the pigsty.
They live in the
That's how bad
pigsty.
it is.
That's how bad it is. And he goes out fishing one day, and he catches a fish, and of course it's a talking fish.
Of course.
And he has the sense to realize that this talking fish is a special fish. I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
Okay, but he doesn't have the sense to realize that maybe I could get some wishes out of this fish. So he lets the fish go, goes back home to his wife, who we will describe in more detail later,
Yes.
who says, "You dummy, why didn't you ask it for something?"
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows if you get a talking fish,
It's going to grant you wishes.
it's going to grant you wishes, yes. So the wife says, "Go back, and I don't want to be in this hovel anymore. I want to be in a nice little cottage."
Very nice.
So he goes back to the water, and the water is different for some reason.
Right,
Yeah.
the water.
Is changed, and he asks. He just calls to the fish, "Hey, fish!" And up it comes.
There it comes.
And he says, "Hey, my wife was thinking maybe we could live in a cottage, and the go home. You're
He
in
says
a
it's
cottage.
already done.
It's done. You're already there." So he goes back, and
And
they're in
it's-
this pleasant little cottage.
What a lovely, with a garden.
Yeah, and they've got they've got nice dishes. They've got everything that you could
Yes.
like.
I mean,
you think I would love to live in.
The
that cottage.
upgrade from the pigsty had to be
Just tremendous.
everything you could ever want.
Yeah.
You would never want another thing.
Right, but then from this point it just escalates. The wife is like,
It doesn't take
cottage.
long either.
Yeah,
It's like 12 hours, 6 hours.
Exactly.
The cottage isn't good enough. I need a castle.
Yeah.
And then he goes back. Okay, you're in a castle. And then the castle isn't good enough. I need to be in a palace. Okay, now you're in a palace.
I want to be. We've got to the emperor yet?
Yeah, then I want to be a king.
I wanna
Oh,
be
then
a
I want to
king.
Now,
be a king.
this it's some gender bending thing. The woman is a king for some reason.
I don't
This is
know why,
weird.
but-
And so then, okay, she's a king. And then king isn't good enough. I need to be the emperor. And then the fish says, "You're an emperor." And then, okay, this is all wonderful being the emperor, but I want to be God.
And the whole time, the husband's going, "All right, you're
This
really
is too much,
honey. You're pushing it. I can't ask him
I
for
can't
that.
ask
There's
for
no
this."
way he's going to grant this, and we're going to ruin the good thing that we have.
Yeah.
If I keep asking him for stuff like
And
this.
every time he goes back to the water is worse and worse and worse. It's like
Yes.
churning and
Different
everything.
colors.
It's different colors and it gets rougher and everything's messed up. So
But
finally,
when she
goes
becomes
back,
emperor, she's on a throne made of gold and whatever.
Yeah.
Then the throne is
2
mi-
miles.
2 miles high.
2 miles high.
2 miles high.
And her crown is like
3
9
yards
feet.
high.
Yeah,
Yeah,
9
that's
feet
right.
high.
Yeah.
But when she becomes emperor, it's 3 miles high, and she has 3 crowns.
That's right. That's right.
She's wearing
So, but she
three
says,
crowns.
but she looks out and she sees the sun rising,
Yeah.
and she thinks, "I will never be satisfied until I can say when the sun's
Yes.
going to rise." So she says, "Go back to that fish, and I want to have godlike powers."
I want to
So
be like God.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes back and asks the fish, and very reluctantly, he's a very unassuming sort of a guy, which actually makes a lot of sense that he's the kind of guy that would marry that kind of woman. But anyway,
He's a
You need
flounder,
it.
by the way.
yeah, right.
So he has 2 eyes on one side of his face.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
weird
well,
fish.
okay, interesting.
So
Good point.
he goes back to the fish and says, "My wife wants to have godlike powers," and the fish is like, "Okay," but now they're back in the hovel.
Yeah.
They're back in the pigsty.
And the end.
Right,
Yeah.
the end.
And
So-
just all of a sudden,
Yes, it's a
the end.
complete shutdown.
Yeah.
And all right. Well, what's your first commentary there, Longinus? Like first reaction to
Of course,
the
this
story?
there's lots of tales like this throughout, all different cultures.
Uh-huh.
The
The avaricious wife.
Yeah.
right, well, the avaricious life, but the idea that greed can never be satisfied.
Yeah.
Desire is
Yeah.
always there,
Yeah.
and always asking for more and more and more.
Mm.
So I mean that's definitely part of it. But I also think there is my biggest question with this is the fish always gave to the fisherman what he wanted.
Right.
And I am assuming that he gave that last wish that put them back in that last wish to be like God,
Mm-hmm.
put him back in the hovel,
Right.
was truly what was right. To be like God
Yeah.
is to be what? Back in the hovel.
Well, that
So I don't know, and Adam and Matt never talked about that. That was the one thing.
See, I thought, following up on that theme, I thought what was missing in this story is he shouldn't have been a fisherman. He should have been a carpenter. Because then sending him back to being a poor carpenter saying, I want to be like God. Well, now you're a poor carpenter. That
Right.
would resonate a little bit.
Yeah.
It would resonate a little bit more. Like, how is living in a pigsty and being a fisherman like God?
Well, let me ask you, Crowhill, because you know more than I do.
Hold on. Was he granting the wish, or was he punishing them for
overstepping?
Yeah.
Yes,
right.
overstepping.
Exactly. I mean, you could look at it either way. Right. But anyway, you were going to ask. Yeah.
Well, the symbol of the fish is a symbol of Christianity,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Throughout early Christianity.
Yes.
Could there be an allusion to that? Here's this fish granting wishes.
Huh.
Could that be an allusion back to Christianity, or is like the fish? Because Matt and Adam said that the fish was a princess or a prince.
Yeah,
exactly. He was a prince that had turned into a flounder, because that's what happens to princes.
Yeah, but it's like which there's the frog prince.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
so it was a cursed prince.
Yeah.
Who had been cursed, but with his powers, he couldn't unfish himself, I guess. But he could
Right. Could grant you to become an emperor. But actually, that's an interesting question. But see, to me, that would even it would have been a stronger story,
Right.
if it was a fish and he was a carpenter, because that would tie in the Christian themes, right?
Right. I also think there is maybe more of a pagan or a natural sort of spiritual piece to
Sure.
it, where
Yeah.
the fish represents nature, the sea.
The sea clearly represents nature,
Right. And it's
Yeah.
always giving. It's always given to man. And at the end, when man wanted to become God, maybe nature said, "Oh, that's a little bit too much."
Yeah.
So and said, "Well, you're back in your hovel again." But I don't know. I mean, that's the question. Did the fish give them what they? Did the fish fulfill that last wish, or did the fish punish them for that last?
Because
wish?
he never argued. As soon as the man asked, he said, "It's already done. Go back. Go back. It's already done."
Yeah.
And
The fish already knew what he was going to ask.
Right.
Because he would come to the fish and say, she wants to be in a cottage. Well, she's already in a cottage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's already done. I already know what you're asking, and it's done, which is odd.
Right, because it's kind of as they mentioned, most fairy tales end in somebody doing something good and being rewarded.
Yeah.
And this is like the anti-fairy.
That was a good point, I thought.
Yeah, this is a case
Yeah.
where bad deeds result in punishment,
Right.
which is not really that consistent with the fairy tales.
I thought the idea of the sea changing every time.
I never got
the
I never got the changing and the churning in the colors, and sometimes it was bubbling, and sometimes it was.
Yeah, I got the impression that it was getting worse every time.
Could it also be that when you are in the throes of greed and desire, you wish to be God, you don't know what God is. You can't know the characteristics of God when you're in the throes of greed and desire.
Okay,
right.
That would be
all
that
you're
would be
thinking about is
Meaning,
the joy of the and the joy of the power. Like being God means, you get to. You don't have. There's no responsibility there. You're just get to do whatever you want, and everyone has to do what you say. And the poor henpecked husband and the
I think
awful wife who can never be satisfied.
Right. Yeah. Well, that would be a psychological take on it. And another take on it would be that the more you disrupt the order of things, the more chaos you're causing.
And that could be with because this was written in the 1300s or something.
Who knows? I mean, some of these
no, because they made reference to the fact that Napoleon was laying waste to all of Europe, and
in the time when but a lot of these stories,
what Napoleon wanted,
the format that we have them in now is one thing, but how old the story is. A lot of times these stories are really, really old. They've been retold,
which is fun. Which is what's good about this podcast is they find every reference to it.
Right, from Egyptian mythology.
Wait a minute. Do you remember them talking about the AT system? So there's the Arne-Thompson classification system.
Oh, they did, yeah. I did
So
remember that.
it's a system that categorizes the tales
Right.
and motifs based on their narrative context.
Right.
So this would
Is
fall.
it a
This
girl
would,
or a boy character?
right. You've got this falls on. This is a class 115B, which is talking
Right.
animal.
Yes.
Plus the avaricious wife.
Yes.
Also,
And
so
the wicked stepmother.
Yes,
yeah.
right. You ate something that turned you into something else motif. So
right.
there's a classification system
Isn't
out
that
there.
interesting?
Yes.
Yes.
And so they often make reference to that. So I don't know where this would have. So each of them falls. You would say that each story has its own number.
Right.
But it's also
Part of a
an
classification.
AT57 and also an AT1600B.
Could you imagine the scene? You've got this big convention, and all these people are sitting around, and they're all experts on
folklore.
On folklore, and one of them goes, "Yeah, that's kind of like the AT12-3,"
And they would know exactly.
what you're
So
talking
there was a
about, yeah.
Finnish folklorist named Arne, Aarne, later expanded by an American named Thompson, and so then that's how the AT
Thompson
system
categorization
system came
Yeah,
about.
that's cool.
And that's awesome.
So this one, it's a relatively simple story. You get the impression that this guy deserved that wife because he never stands up for himself.
No.
Ever.
No,
He doesn't have the sense to make a wish when he catches a talking fish, right? So he's kind of dumb to begin with.
Right. This would be
Or he's happy and satisfied.
the overbearing wife and mealy mouth husband motif.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And the wife isn't much of a character. All she is greed. And
Yes.
she's the personification of greed.
Right.
And
Sure, there's
nothing's-
a feminist take on this one here.
Probably.
But I don't want to go down that road.
No, not on the PNC show.
All right, so are we ready to move on to number 3?
I think so. I mean, this one is relatively shallow in a way.
Well, yeah. And,
Well, got something else.
You got something else to say?
No, I was going to say the next one is extremely the plot's extremely complicated.
Yes.
It goes on and on. And
It
on
really,
and on.
it really seems like it
but it's
was
great. It's a great story.
2 stories stuck on the ends of each other. Like I'm not sure the front half. You could chop the front half off, and it would still be the same story.
Right.
So anyway, it is the 2 brothers. Okay. So we have 2 brothers, and then we have 2 more brothers. Very early on, you have the rich brother and the poor brother,
Yes.
and the poor brother has
Twin boys.
twin boys.
Yeah.
Although they refer to one as younger and the other one as older, but I guess they could be talking about minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Because
They-
they can't both come out at the same time.
They're as alike as 2 drops of water. So
Which was an interesting thing, alike as 2 drops of water. And they made something out of that later on in the show.
yeah.
That it was anyway.
So there's all right. So the kid, the poor children go over to the rich uncle who's a goldsmith,
Yeah.
and they steal scraps of food.
Yes. Yes, and that's how they live just by. But then something weird happens.
There's a golden bird.
Yeah, and they throw a stone at the golden bird, knock a feather off of the golden bird, and it's pure gold. And they take that and they give it to the goldsmith, and he gives them money for it.
Right.
Right.
Gives us the gold for the gold.
Yeah, and then they capture the
Then
bird.
they get, and then
They
give that.
throw a rock, and they capture the bird and they take it to the.
And
goldsmith.
as everybody knows,
If you eat the heart and liver from a golden bird that you happen to kill,
yeah.
then that will make you fart gold pieces or something
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Every morning you'll find gold pieces under your pillow or
Yeah.
something.
Something weird like that.
So the boys sneak in for steal some morsels of food.
Yeah.
Just happen to eat.
Yeah. And then now they're getting these little gold pieces under their. It's like ultimate tooth fairy.
Right.
You get a gold piece under your pillow every morning.
Right.
Now,
But-
go ahead.
I was just going to just move it on to.
Yeah, the boys get exiled from. How do they get kicked out
Well, what
of Dad's
happens
house?
is the poor brother of the goldsmith finds this out and finds out the goldsmith is really upset and says the only way that I can save my children is to leave them in the forest.
Yes, there's a little bit of a
Right.
Hansel and Gretel
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah,
So he leaves them in the forest, and then the hunter comes by and says, "Oh, I got 2 boys now. Why don't you come out, I'll raise you?"
I'll be a foster dad.
Yeah.
And all these little gold bits I'm going to put him in a little trust fund for you.
Right,
He
yeah.
doesn't.
He's like the
He's
best,
a good guy.
He's a
Yeah.
good guy. He's the best guy in the story.
Yeah,
Right.
and I'll train you to be hunters.
Right.
And then,
And give you some animals.
And once they become hunters, he says, "All right, off you go."
Well, he gives
Take your
them a
way in
test.
the world.
He gives them a test. Like, something is flying by and you've got to shoot it.
Right.
And if you hit it, then, okay, I'll give you this dog and you can go off and be a professional hunter. Yeah,
So they
that's
both
your
get
end of your
dogs.
internship.
Then they leave, and then and it's just doesn't even make any sense. They keep they quit. They run into a series of animals. Yes,
A rabbit, a dog, a fox, a bear, a lion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
somehow these things all become part of their
and there's
their
two of each.
train.
And so each of the brothers has a dog and all of these other animals with them, and boo, 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 boo. And then they decide, you know what? This forest's not big enough for the two of us. I don't know why.
Yeah.
They just decide we're going to go our own ways.
But their
the
hunter foster father had given them this magical knife.
Yeah.
That if they stuck it into a tree, it would like.
If it rusted,
If
it
it
means
rusted-
one of them is dead.
Yeah.
If it's not rusted, that means that they're both alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very strange, but
So
that's what
who
happens
knows?
in fairy tales.
So
yeah.
So now we're just following one brother.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens to the other
And
brother.
now it just changed into a whole different
Now,
story.
so now it's the story become because there's no reference to the gold bird or the gold pieces
Right,
anymore.
the gold is all gone
The
now.
whole, the dad, the whole first part of the story
He's gone.
Just
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything
Yes,
anymore.
totally wandered off into different territory.
So, he goes into a town draped in black,
Yes,
and so now we finally get good old fairy tale kings, princesses, and dragons.
right.
Right.
And yeah, there's this dragon that if you kill the dragon, you get to marry the princess, which is a regular sort of a thing.
Right, but the
Good thing.
mourning is because every year they have to sacrifice a virgin, and they've run out of virgins. The last virgin on the block is the king's daughter.
And he didn't want to sacrifice her to the dragon.
Yes, and they keep sending in. And many guys have gone out there to slay the dragon and
They don't
claim
do
the
it.
princess, and they've all been failures. So we know what's happening now. We're going to
The
lose the
hunters-
princess, and next year, when there are no more virgins, they'll just destroy the.
Destroy the whole
whole
town.
town.
Right.
So the hunters, with all of his
His
animal
friends,
retinue,
right.
says,
I'll take care of this dragon. Yes.
this dragon.
Yes.
And it's not as hard as you would think.
No,
Yeah.
he has a
There's
very
like
easy time.
He goes up there,
killing-
there's a
But
potion
there's,
waiting.
there's right, but there, right. So he goes up and there's like a church, and underneath
Yeah.
the threshold of the church is like this double-edged sword, and he has to drink a potion
He says,
to
yeah, if you
become
drink this-
strong enough to pull it out.
Exactly.
And he does
King
that.
Arthur going on there.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's like, well, how about the other people who have tried to kill the dragon? They didn't see the sign or the potion or the thing.
Right.
Anyway, the dragon's got 7 heads,
Okay.
and
And he's fighting and he chops off one head. You're like, you done now? No. And he chops off the next head. And it's like kind of a long, drawn out.
it is. Yeah,
He
too long.
finally gets down to the dragon only has one head left, and like it's almost like the thing in Monty Python. Chopped off the arm, chopped off the other
Yeah.
arm, chopped off the leg. Just a flesh wound. So he finally kills the dragon.
He kills the dragon.
But then and he's going to marry the princess. But
And,
then
gosh, he's so tired. He's going to take a
Right.
nap.
But,
gonna take a
but
nap.
before you but the princess is so grateful of him and his menagerie, she gives presents
Oh,
to
that's
all
a good
the
point.
animals.
right, yeah,
And gives a silk handkerchief to the hunter.
Nice.
And what does he do? He picks up 7 tongues and puts them and
Oh,
stores
good
them
point.
in
That's
the silk.
important.
Right.
So now he's got
Handkerchief.
the handkerchief filled with 7 dragon tongues. Each of the animals has. I think she took a necklace and then broke it apart so that each of the animals has a piece of the right.
When
So-
do we get to the lion and the wine testing?
Yes, almost there. Because now the marshal.
Marshall, that's the guy.
So
Right.
now
Because
the,
he comes out, finds him the hunter sleeping.
everybody's sleep. Oh, but it goes down the whole thing. It's like the hunter says, "I'm gonna take a nap." Lion, you need to make sure.
yeah,
and then the
yeah.
lion says, "I'm tired too. How about you, bear?" And they pass it all the way down.
To the hair.
To the hair, and he
rabbit,
falls asleep
and
too.
he falls asleep. So everybody is derelict in their duties.
Yes.
The hunter is asleep. The marshal comes out.
He's
And
got a great idea.
yeah, he's gonna say, I'm gonna take credit for this. Right. So he takes does he kill the hunter?
He
Or-
cuts
Yeah,
his
he
head
cuts
off.
his head off.
That's right. Cuts his head off and takes the tongues or whatever, and then goes and claims that I'm the guy.
And then
who killed
tells
the dragon.
the princess, if you don't you have to
You got to go along with
follow
this
this story.
right.
And she says, okay, I'll marry you 1 year and 1 day from today.
Because she's hoping that the hunter is still sitting out there.
She doesn't know that his head's chopped off.
That's right.
Now what do we do with this hunter with no head?
You go ask the hare, right? Because the hare knows that
there's this special plant.
Right, there's a special plant that has a special root that he's going to
200
run
miles
on,
away.
Right, that he's going to run 200 miles away, grab it, and then throw it in
1 day.
Heal.
In 1 day. The lion is like, okay, that's fine. You got to do it in a day, though.
I don't know why that's the rule, but
so he comes back and it is the lion picks up the head and puts it next to the body, and they put the root in there. But the lion made a terrible mistake.
Put his head on backwards.
or as the Brits say, back to front.
Yes.
They put his head on back to
I
front.
don't know. It was just a stupid detail. But
And he's walking around.
He's walking around, and all of a
backwards.
sudden he realizes, what am I doing?
And then the lion says,
I got it. I got a solution.
right, I'll take care of it, and rips the head off, turns it around, puts it back on.
Does the hare have to go back 200 miles, or can they use the same?
I think
No, I think he
route?
used the same one.
Because he ends up using it 3 times in this story.
Oh, I thought. All right, I thought he made multiple trips.
No, I
yeah,
think
that's
it's
good.
just one
That's
try.
good.
Yeah. So he puts his head on backwards. Then the lion chops his head off again. They put it on
Why they need
forwards,
to do that?
and then he's got to go. But then his brother shows up.
Hold on, no. First, he's now going. Doing whatever he does for a year.
Yeah. Oh, because he doesn't know. He thinks the woman just left him and didn't like him anymore.
He didn't like him anymore.
Yeah.
So then he comes back to town the day before the wedding.
Yeah.
And then everything starts to fall into place. Like, well, wait a minute. Oh, and here we got now the animal. For some reason, he goes to an inn and just one of and has to eat everything that
He goes to the inn and he makes a bet with the innkeeper. It says, I bet I could get a loaf of the king's bread here. And that's when he goes and he says, hare, go get me a loaf of bread. And the hare goes out there and, of course, asks the queen, or the princess.
Yes.
And that
now does she see the necklace and go?
And she sees the necklace and goes, oh, you got to be from the hunter and my savior. And gives him the bread, and then gives him the meat, and then gives him the vegetables, and then
it's a very long scene.
It's a very
gives
long
him
scene.
the confectionaries,
and then it ends up with the
lion.
sommelier.
Yeah. So then we have this long scene where the lion is okay. I need to drink
Great
the same
wine
wine
connoisseur.
the same wine that the king drinks, and this wine guy comes out and gives him some wine. He tastes it and says, "No, that's not right." And they go back and forth. No,
he's
that's
swirling the glass
right.
and
He's sniffing it, looking at the legs. So this expert wine tasting lion is having a contest with the sommelier who works for the king.
Pretty much.
Eventually gets the right wine, brings it back.
And that tells the hunter that the princess still loves him.
Yeah, right. Somebody finds out that the princess still loves him, but then I'm just trying to remember when the brother shows up.
Well, so
no, they get married. No, they get married. They don't.
Right,
the
they
brother
get married.
doesn't show up until after they get married. That's right.
Right, they get married, and then after they get married, they're living a nice little happy life. But there is a forest out there.
Yeah,
that you don't go into because it's all dark and nobody wants to go in
and there's
there.
witches and stuff in there. That's right. And he still has an adventurous spirit, and he wants to go into this forbidden forest. And the king's like, no, don't go in there. You got a lovely wife. Everything's fine. You're the king.
He's like,
but
this is what I do.
This is what I do. I'm an adventure dude. So he goes off into the forest.
Adventure Island.
And runs into
a witch.
Well, first
he gets
of all,
lost.
A witch in a tree.
A witch in a tree.
Right.
Yeah. And the witch tricks him and turns him to stone.
Yep.
Yeah. And so he's turned to stone. And then
it switches to the other brother.
And he goes back and looks at the magic knife and sees that there's something wrong with his brother. So he goes off looking.
The knife is half rusted on one side and totally fine on the other. And he goes, oh my God, he's in peril.
So he shows up in the same town.
Right.
And everybody's like,
oh, Your Majesty.
Oh, you're back.
Because he looks exactly like his brother.
Oh, well, he's just fake it till you make it, right?
That's right.
He's like, he didn't know what's going on, but he's faking it.
Sure, if you want to call me the king, that's fine. And then he goes in and he's he ends up presenting himself as the king.
I guess in an effort to discover what happened to his brother.
But he does it only to discover what happens to his brother. And when he's sleeping in the bed with the princess, puts in the middle between them a double-edged sword.
Yes.
And she's like, what the heck's
This
going on?
guy's something's gotten into him.
Something's
He's
wrong.
going to kill me,
That's right.
but I'll just lay here
This is
nervously
not
on my
like every
side of the
other
bed.
night. That's
And
But he
so-
finally does his intel, and he finally figures out that his brother's in the woods someplace.
Right.
And says, I'm going out there. And then everybody's like, no, don't do that. You got lost last time. You don't do it. But he goes in there.
Yeah, and he outsmarts the witch.
Yep.
And now, in order to get him back from being, he finds not only his brother turned to stone, but a bunch of other people who've been
Yeah.
turned to stone.
Yeah. All
Now,
the
do
animals.
they use the rabbit trick thing again to turn
I
them
don't know
back?
how they
No,
unstone
he
themselves.
gets the witch to turn him back into humans.
Okay,
We just
And
threaten
then he throws the witch in the fire anyway.
yeah.
He's
that's
like,
fine.
if you don't tell me how to do this, I'm going to throw you in the fire. And she says, okay, I'll tell you how to do it. And then she does. And he goes, I'm going to throw you in the fire. And after he throws the witch in the fire, the great dark cloud of the forest sort of dissipates. And it's a 3 hour, and they can look out and see the palace and the town, but it's a 3 hour walk. So they finally walk out in there, and
then
as they're walking,
He finds out the original brother finds out that his brother has been sleeping with his wife.
right.
we're not sleeping,
Well,
but
he's sleeping in the same bed. In the
bed.
same bed.
Right.
Right.
So actually,
And
sleeping.
kills him. And he's like,
In
overcome
a
with jealousy
fit
and
of
kills
jealousy.
him. Kills him.
So-
But then he finds out later on
The whole sword trick.
the whole sword trick that he was actually being faithful to him, and good old Mr. Rabbit comes along with the
200 miles.
with the special herb and brings him back to life. And what
And
happens
that's pretty
after
much
that?
it,
That's
right?
pretty much it.
Is that yeah, and then sort of a happily ever after, right? He's the thing, and the brothers. You find out the brothers faithful. The prince, the first brother, becomes king like he should be, and yeah, there you go.
There you go. And of course, I mean, it's
Nuts.
It's totally nuts. It's
Yeah.
it's all disjointed. It
Very
goes
long.
It goes
You can tell.
from place to place, and it's
And the first
you really
part of
could
the
break
first
it.
part doesn't really tie into the second part.
You could easily strip out 5 independent stories from this.
And if you were an editor, you could speed things up there
Yes,
in the middle.
quite,
You wouldn't
quite considerably. Yes.
But right, if you're sitting around the campfire and you have all the youngins with you,
Yeah.
And this is really the only thing you're going to do the entire
Yeah,
right.
night.
And it sounds exactly like that. It sounds like
Yeah.
a bunch of Boy Scouts sitting around the campfire, and the leader has to make up a story, and he's just making up crazy things as he goes
Yeah,
along.
and the thing is,
then
like,
a magic
instead
disc comes
of
along.
condensing like all 5 animals
Yeah.
when they originally got them,
Mhm.
or as they each go to the princess,
Mhm.
you're basically telling the same story
Yeah.
6 different times, each time with a different animal.
Yes.
You know, it's just
Right, and like,
it's a time,
for
it's a
example,
story
the-
to tell.
original dog that was given to him by their foster father.
Yeah.
They don't say anything about him afterwards.
I know.
Foster
All
father,
the other
who
animals.
was really a great guy.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
Because it could have gone, oh, the boys have a little way of, putting
Yeah.
gold under their pillows,
Yes.
and that would be the story. No, he
No.
doesn't even care. I'll set this gold aside for you
I'll-
until you need it.
I'll put it in the bank.
Although they'll
Set
put it
up
in
an account for
set
you.
an account for you. But what happened? They didn't have any more pillows? How come they didn't get any
I
more
know.
gold in
Yeah.
the rest of the?
It doesn't
Story.
make any sense. But one thing that
Doesn't make it
I
that
learned,
fun.
one thing I learned about the structure of these kind of stories is in telling stories to my grandson, kids really like repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
when they hear the same thing, they perk up and they're really excited. So when you get back to fee, fi, fo, fum, I
yeah.
smell the blood of an Englishman, or you get back to this one's too hard, this one's too soft, this one's just right.
Yeah.
All those kinds of things
That's a
that
good point.
repeat through a story.
They get so
Kids
excited.
love
Yeah.
that. They get excited. They smile and laugh when they
And
hear
you know
that
what
same
happened next?
pattern.
And then a bear came, and the exact
Right.
same thing happened.
Yes.
And then a lion came.
This is like a
right?
shaggy.
It's like, yeah.
This is like a Shaggy Dog story.
Yeah.
I think the fisherman's wife more had structure to it. It had more of a deeper meaning.
Yes.
Or it was conveying
Yeah.
more to it than.
Yes. This one's just
No,
a whole bunch of crazy stuff thrown together.
Now, maybe
Yeah.
all that little crazy stuff apart from each other, or maybe in relationship with each other, tells something deeper, but I can't figure it out.
But just in terms of positive characteristics that you would want to pass on, you would say, the faithful brother, right?
But I think if I had this story,
the evil marshal gets his due.
Right, exactly. If I had this story, I could break it into 5 or 6 or 7 independent stories that would actually make sense.
Right.
The guy goes out in the woods and gets tricked by the witch, and then his brother comes back and saves him. That itself could be a story.
Right.
The marshal, as you said, the marshal tricking him, that could be a story. The
golden bird.
The golden bird, that could be a story.
Right. Because you had the son of the foster, right? And then you had I don't know if he was evil, but he was rich. The rich, mean brother who apparently
and he never gets anything. He never gets. One of the things about these kinds of stories is usually the bad guy gets it. You have Hansel and Gretel. You've got the wicked witch in the forest. Well, eventually she gets burned in the pot. And that's what the kids want. The kids want a resolution. The bad guy gets it.
Right. So you got the marshal.
Yeah, he got it.
He got it. And but I want to get back to Longinus. You mentioned how did the handkerchief with 7 tongues come back into play? Because they actually produced the heads.
Right. So the day of the wedding of the marshal and the princess together, finally the hunter shows up. And says, "Oh wait a minute! I'm really the guy.
I'm the guy who killed the dragon."
And then you're like, "Oh, do you have any evidence?" He goes, "Well, I got 7 dragon tongues. Do you?"
And also the woman.
No, but somehow the 7 heads were there, and then and they just happened to match perfectly into these 7 dragon head mouths. Is that enough evidence for you?
Now, 7 heads, does that represent the 7 deadly sins?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Why did it have 7 heads?
Yeah.
A lot of times the number 7 is presented as just like the fullness of something. 7 is the there's 7 days in a week, and a lot of times the number 7 is used to express completeness. Or something like that. Yeah.
So he was a complete dragon at one time.
Until he chopped off his head. So it was a wacky story.
Well, anyway, it was fun to listen to. I recommend this Grimm reading. I've listened to a bunch of other ones. Not only do the 3 sluggards.
Yeah.
It was actually like 10 sentences long to tell the whole story. But the show itself was 30 minutes long because he had all of the references of, this is like the Turkish story of 1322. So they have Grimm's notes, so they know what how the Grimm brothers came about the story. They might have picked it up in this town, was told to them by the Duke of something. Yeah. And then they also have further notes about similar stories, and of course, like the AT system, it's like it also falls in the category of, and they will tell some of those stories. So,
all right, so I got to bring out one other thing about Grimm's stories in general.
Yes,
which is the modern reaction to a Grimm's fairy tale.
Yes,
when we were going out on a camping trip, we listened to one of these. You, me, and your brother, and all of us are sitting there thinking, "This is horrifying."
Right.
Like.
It's pretty brutal.
How could you tell this kind of a story to a child?
Yeah.
And I think, well,
this was Tolkien's criticism of Disney.
Yeah.
They Disneyfied it.
Is that they make everything, we bubble wrap kids, right? And like nowadays, modern kids have crying fits if you disagree with them. Like, they're in college now. They're grown
they have
adults.
Safe spaces.
They have safe spaces. They need coloring books and stuff. And I wonder if the Grimms, we think that it's horrible to tell children about, mothers abandoning children and people getting their heads chopped off and witches. But kids, I don't think kids process these stories the same way adults do.
We assume that they...
that they're horrified by it. But their dreams are probably 20 times worse than anything we tell them in these stories. And I think we have developed this attitude of being so soft with children And
that's the proper way to raise children.
Yeah.
Is by
telling them
shielding them from
sweet stories,
danger.
and shielding them from all this kind of horrible stuff. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's better for kids to face these weird things.
That evil is out there, bad things can happen, but good people can overcome the good knight.
Yeah,
can slay the dragon and end up
win
with
the princess and all. Right. Yeah. So I think maybe I'm not necessarily endorsing Grimm's fairy tales.
I would say read them first, and they can get rough.
Maybe introduce a little bit of the grimness when you're telling the story.
Now,
is that where that word came from?
Well, exactly. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Did Grimm come from the brothers?
Right.
Because it's a very good name for. It's like, oh, that was a pretty good story. I don't know, there were some grim parts though, weren't there?
Right.
It's like, well,
maybe that's where it came from. I don't know.
Exactly
we should have looked that up.
Well, we will next time because we still have
2 more stories.
1.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We will do another.
All right.
Cheers.
Stay grim.
Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.